Hello, my name is Angela Johansson, and this presentation is a discussion of my action research plan that I created in my research and education course and then implemented in my practicum in education course through Arkansas State University. It's titled Improving Children's Social and Emotional Development Using Children's Literature and Increasing Awareness of Their Feelings. I would like to begin the presentation by giving you an overview of what I will be discussing today. I'm going to start with the area of concern, research findings, topic of interest, the research question that I developed, implementation of the methodology and interventions for my action research plan, raw data interventions and analysis of my data, the research findings that I came up with, conclusions, significance of the study, and recommendations for future studies. The area of concern that I have been noticing in my preschool classroom was that there was a lot of negative social and emotional behaviors being exhibited by students in my classroom. I have students that are ages 3 to 5, and there's no social and emotional curriculum in place. I used to have a social and emotional curriculum that I used last year, but I have nothing this year. I do have basic strategies in place to teach social and emotional skills. I began research on this topic by looking up research online. Current review of the literature revealed that teachers feel they need to teach social and emotional skills. There are research-proven strategies teachers can use, and properly chosen children's literature has been shown to improve social and emotional development. I created an annotated bibliography of the research that I found on this topic, but a couple of specific studies of interest really popped out at me. The first one was Killingsworth and Crawford's 2018 study that discussed research that found that literature helps children understand and deal with life's daily challenges. It serves as a point of reference to help children understand their experiences. It offers insight into human behaviors. It stimulates children's curiosity, and it helps to develop problem-solving skills. Another study of interest was Boland, Britt, Davis, and Wilkins' 2016 study that discussed the benefits of interactive read-alouds. Selecting the correct text for students' developmental levels is crucial. Modeling, guiding, monitoring, and questioning to stimulate students' responses is necessary. Students will create new reactions and decisions when responding to stories, hearing views of others, and students apply new learning to interactions with others and to their approach with conflict. I narrowed my topic of interest down to social and emotional issues that are observed throughout the school day. 4 specific areas that I was concerned with was seeking adults to intervene in conflict, not sharing, yelling at friends, and physical altercations, which led me to develop a research question, which was, would implementation of daily social and emotional lessons using quality children's literature, along with the read-aloud approach and group discussions during large group time, help to reduce the frequency of the negative social and emotional behaviors that are being displayed in a preschool classroom? Which leads me to this section of my presentation, which is a discussion of the implementation of the methodology and the interventions that I actually used in my action research plan. Before I began my action research plan, I needed to have a hypothesis. I decided on a hypothesis that was wondering if adding a daily social emotional lesson to a preschool classroom using quality children's literature, along with the read-aloud approach and group discussion during large group time, and another intervention of adding a feelings chart to encourage students to identify their feelings throughout the day, would result in a reduction in the frequency of negative social and emotional behaviors that are being displayed by the preschool students during choice time. I had initially planned for my action research plan to run for 8 weeks. However, I realized that I would only have 5 weeks to collect data, and my students in my classroom would be gone for 1 week on spring break. So I got permission from my professor to begin early, and I was actually able to complete data for 8 weeks, and my action research plan lasted for 11 weeks. During week 1, I began my daily social and emotional lessons on Monday, teaching those daily every week. I began using the feelings chart on Monday and having a discussion of it every day of the week. And I collected my pre-assessment data on Wednesday during choice time. During weeks 2 through week 7, I continued all of that, having the social and emotional lessons daily, the daily use of the feelings chart and the discussion of it, the collection of data every Wednesday during choice time. During week 8, I continued the social and emotional lessons daily, the daily use of the feelings chart and the discussion of it. And week 8 is where I collected my post-assessment data on Wednesday during choice time. Week 9, I used to analyze the data that I had collected. I broke the social and emotional issues that I observed into 4 main categories: physical aggression, yelling and whining, not sharing, and seeking adults to intervene in peer conflict. During week 10, I created an Excel spreadsheet where I entered my data. I was able to create tables and bar graphs. I created tables and bar graphs for the pre and post assessment data, as well as data for the entire 8-week period. During week 11, I analyzed the data and I drew conclusions from that. I was able to determine the significance of the findings, as well as make recommendations for future studies. Which leads to the next section of the presentation, which is looking at the raw data, the actual interventions that I used, and an analysis of the data. My pre-assessment data, as I had said earlier, was collected during the very first week on Wednesday, February 6th of 2019, during the first week of interventions. My classroom consists of 19 preschool students ages 3 to 5. 17 of them were present during the pre-assessment. I used an observational notes form that I had created for this action research plan, where I recorded all negative social and emotional behavior that I observed during a 60-minute choice time. I am the teacher in the classroom, so I just took a kind of hands-off approach and allowed the teacher's assistant to kind of guide the children in choice time, and I tried to set back as much as possible, recording my observations. I also videotaped choice time and reviewed the videos in the next day or two to see if there was any negative social and emotional behaviors that I missed, and then I added them to my observational notes form to ensure accuracy of my observations. There were a total of 7 negative social and emotional issues that I observed during the pre-assessment period: 3 issues of physical aggression, 2 issues of not sharing, 1 issue of seeking adults for interventions, and the average number of issues per student present was 0.41. This is an example of my pre-assessment raw data and an actual copy of it. The first intervention that I used was the feelings chart. This is where students would sign in each morning, placing their name under the feeling face that they felt at that time. They always discuss with me why they felt that way. And then we would have a brief morning meeting in the morning in which I would discuss where all of our children were at as far as their feelings basis goes. And we would have a short discussion of that. That took about 5 minutes. I also encouraged the children to move their names throughout the day as they needed to and as their feelings changed. The faces that I used actually on this chart came from the How Do You Feel chart that is available at Conscious Discipline's website with the free membership. The second intervention that I used daily was a lesson that I would create using children's literature. I chose specific topics that I focused on each week. We had a group discussion of that topic before, during, and after our read aloud. This took approximately 15 minutes per lesson, and the daily lessons were added for the entire 8-week period. The topics that I chose to focus on for each week are as follows. Week 1, happy feelings. Week 2, sad feelings. Weeks 3 and 4, angry feelings. Week 5, scared and worried feelings. Week 6 and 7, caring about others and empathy. And week 8 was frustration. I had initially planned to only use books that came from the Center on the Social and Emotional Foundations for Early Learning Children's book list. available at their website. However, I found that I could not get my hands on all of those books because I do not have books in my classroom. I go to the Marion County Public Library in Marion County, Florida, where I get all my books. So I was able to use a topic search on Marion County Public Library's website, and I found a lot of books there as well. If you would like to see a list of the books that I used for the 8-week period, it will be at the end of this presentation after my references. An example of a lesson that I did was using the book When I'm Feeling Bombaloo. I introduced the title of the book to the children, asked them if they knew what it meant to feel bombaloo, and I asked them to listen to the story and raise their hand if they thought they knew what it meant as I read the story to them. So we had a discussion of what bombaloo meant as I read through the story. And then after reading the book, I asked the students what makes them angry, what do they do when they feel angry, how do they calm themselves down after they're angry. And then we discussed the 4 calming techniques that we use in our classroom from Dr. Becky Bailey's Conscious Discipline, the star breathing, the faucet, the balloon, and the pretzel. And we just practiced the faucet calming technique as a group. Post-assessment data was collected during week 8 on Wednesday, April 5th, 2019, during choice time. There were 14 students that were present during the post-assessment period. I used my observational notes form again to record all negative social and emotional behavior that I observed, and I also videotaped it as well and reviewed the videos, adding information that I needed to my observational notes form to ensure for accuracy. The post-assessment data showed 5 negative social and emotional issues that I observed. 2 were issues of physical aggression. 1 was an issue of yelling or whining. 2 issues of seeking adults for intervention. And the average number of issues per student present was 0.36. This is my post-assessment raw data and the form that I used. Data analysis. Data was collected every Wednesday during my 60 minutes of choice time. This day was selected to improve consistency. I had initially thought I would collect data during week 1 for pre-assessment on Monday and then on my last week on Friday. However, I noticed that many students were absent on Mondays and Fridays in my classroom, and I thought that that would negatively impact the data. Also, speech therapy services are provided in my classroom on Tuesdays, Wednesdays, and Thursdays to different students. And by selecting Wednesday every single week, I was making sure that the same students were receiving therapy during that time. Each of my sessions was videotaped and reviewed to ensure that I caught all negative social and emotional issues. The observational notes form was updated as needed by the video review to help improve accuracy, credibility, and triangulation of the study. I also decided to include the average number of issues per student present due to all of the absences that I had in my classroom during that time. We had a flu epidemic that kind of went through our classroom during that time. This average helped to take into account those absences and allowed for equalization of the data. It was calculated by taking the total number of social and emotional issues observed and dividing the number by the number of students present. Data was collected for 8 weeks rather than the 5 weeks initially planned. I believe that helped make the data more accurate and credible, and it improved my chances of seeing a pattern emerging. Data was analyzed using the pre- and post-assessment data as well as the 8 weeks of data, and the data was broken into 4 main categories. I have created definitions for my 4 main categories of data, so there will be no confusion as to what I considered my definitions to be. Physical aggression I considered to be any act of placing hands or another body part on another person in an attempt to harm them or bother them. Yelling or whining was any instance in which a student started yelling at another person or yelling or whining very loudly about something that the student was unhappy about. The other 2 categories for data were not sharing, which is instances in which a student took another student's item or refused to share items that they were working with, and seeking adults for intervention. These are instances in which a student went to an adult to seek intervention due to an issue that they were having with another friend that could have been resolved with the student using their words with the other student, or was an issue in which one student was trying to get another student in trouble by stating what they were doing, like tattling. This would not include instances in which a student sought an adult to intervene when physical harm was imminent or had occurred, or when the student sought an adult when they needed help to complete a task. Which leads to my next section, which is research findings. Pre- and post-assessment data for week 1 and week 8 show a decline in negative social emotional issues observed as follows. Week 1 had a total number of social and emotional issues observed of 7 compared to week 8, which had a total number observed of 5. Week 1 had an average number of issues per student of 0.41 compared to week 8, which was 0.36. When you look at weeks 1 and week 2 and compare them to week 7 and week 8, the decline is more noticeable. Week 1 and week 2 had a total number of social and emotional issues observed of 7 and 11 compared to week 8 that had a total number observed of 3 and 5. Week 1 and week 2's average number of issues per student present was 0.41 and 0.65. That number dropped for week 7 and 8 to 0.17 and 0.36. An additional finding that I noticed that I found rather interesting were 2 students that I have in my classroom. I will call them student D and student J. They have more severe social and emotional issues, and they have a behavior chart that goes home every day for their family to see. There are 8 different categories in this behavior chart in which they can earn a happy face where they follow the rule all the time, a straight face where they follow the rule part of the time, or a sad face where they don't really follow the rule throughout the day at all. What I noticed with these 2 students was that they began receiving fewer and fewer straight and sad faces as the study progressed, which was not something I was anticipating. The data was collected from each of those students' behavior charts for that 8-week study period, and I went ahead and entered it into an Excel spreadsheet and created tables and charts to analyze the data. The analysis showed a significant decline in the number of straight and sad faces each of these 2 students received. The data has been added in the visual graphics section of this presentation so that you can see it. This is a table showing the raw data that I collected. This is the total number of negative emotional and social issues observed during choice time for the 8 weeks. You will see that each row is broken down by the different categories, along with the total number of issues observed, the number of students absent, the number of students present, and the average number of issues per student present. You can see a general trend down on the average number of issues per student present. This is a bar chart that shows the pre- and post-assessment data for weeks 1 and week 8 for the negative social and emotional behaviors observed, broken down by category. In addition to the 2 bars on the very far right, they show the total number of issues observed. This is a bar chart that shows the average number of issues per student present. Weeks 1 through 8 are along the bottom, and the average number of issues observed runs along the vertical column. You should be able to see a general trend downward, especially if you compare week 1 and week 2 to week 7 and week 8, you'll see the bar graph, the numbers have declined. This is a bar graph that shows the total number of negative social emotional situations observed for the entire 8-week period. Once again, you see a general trend downward. And this is a bar chart that has all 8 weeks with each category broken down. So you can see physical aggression, yelling and whining, not sharing, seeking adults for intervention, and total number of issues observed as well there. This is the data that I was talking about with students D and student J. You can see up at the top, the first chart shows student D, week 1 through week 8. the total number of straight faces that he got, the total number of sad faces that he got. If you look at the first few weeks compared to the last few weeks, you'll see his numbers have gone down. With student J, you can see the number of sad faces that he received as well as straight faces through the entire 8-week period, and you can see a decline in that as well. I did add special notes that shows the number of absences each one of the students had. With student J on week 6, he was absent for the entire week, so there's no data there. This is the same information for students D and students J, but I broke it down into a bar graph, making it easier for you to see. You can see the trend downward for both students. Conclusions from my action research plan. I believe students benefited from the addition of the feelings chart as well as implementation of daily social emotional lessons taught using children's literature, using the read aloud approach and group discussions before, during, and after reading of the book. Students' social and emotional skills improved as the number of negative social and emotional issues observed declined. Results of this study will be shared with my administration at my school. Recommendations will be made to continue these interventions in my classroom for the remainder of this school year as well as upcoming school years, and I would like to discuss the possibility of adding this social emotional curriculum to the other preschool classroom. I believe this ARP is significant and the findings of it are significant for multiple reasons. The first is that this research plan supports the annotated bibliography research that I found. The annotated bibliography of this project cited many studies that found explicit teaching of social emotional skills improves students' competencies in this area. This ARP supports that research. It demonstrates a need to have a daily social emotional lesson as part of a preschool classroom's daily schedule, and it demonstrates a teacher's ability to create social emotional lessons using quality children's literature. I know there are some districts that do not provide social and emotional curriculum for teachers, but I believe that this ARP proved that teachers can create that themselves just using books that they can find at the library. I believe it was significant for me as well in the area of personal development. It allowed me to research new ways to try to enhance my students' social and emotional competence, to find new ways to increase social and emotional learning opportunities in my classroom, and to increase the students' interactions with these opportunities. I also found it significant for my continued growth and development. I plan to continue to research quality children's literature to cover topics that I have not yet covered. I plan to continue to research what topics are important to cover with social and emotional lessons, and I plan to continue to research which children's literature appears best for different social and emotional topics. Recommendations for future study. I would like to see this action research plan repeated for a greater length of time and by different individuals besides myself in different classrooms. I would like to gather more data with this ARP after covering more complex issues, such as after addressing the topic of physical aggression. I would like to see this ARP repeated in an early childhood classroom with more students with severe social and emotional issues, because I'm curious to see if the results for these students would be similar to the results that I saw for students D and J. I would like to also see more studies that look at children's literature that covers social emotional issues to evaluate the effectiveness of different books. And I would like to have those social emotional books evaluated by individuals trained to deal with social and emotional issues. This concludes my presentation. I thank you for watching. The next few slides are my references and the list of books that I used in my study.